Thank you, and welcome to another episode of Ask NeuroWord, the podcast where we answer the tough questions on neurodiversity in the workplace. Today we have Kate Hardiman, founder of Unified 360, and myself, Rachel Worsley, founder of Neurodiversity Media, to tackle the question, I suspect a work colleague is neurodivergent. How do I support them? Now, this is quite a commonly asked question, so I'm going to go straight to Kate and ask, where do we start when we come to this particular scenario?
Yeah, hi Rachel. Yes, it is a commonly asked question. It's interesting timing for this today because it came up yet again for me during a workshop yesterday. And when this person asked, or a participant in a group of about 15 people, and I really commended them for asking the question because it's fantastic when you see people are genuinely interested in supporting their colleague. So taking the question, so perhaps you suspect a work colleague might be neurodivergent. You might have noticed things like their interaction or the way that they process information or the way that they manage their work in a way that is that's different from what's typical in your experience. And it's really important to approach these situations with respect and sensitivity and empathy, because we need to remember that it's not about labeling or diagnosing your colleague. We need to leave that to the professionals, psychologists, psychiatrists, GPs. Our job in the workplace is about supporting these people. So the first thing to mention is that it's really important to avoid making assumptions. Just because someone's sensitive to noise or they prefer, detailed emails over verbal instructions doesn't automatically mean that they're neurodivergent. That could just be a personal preference. It's about noticing whether there's a consistent pattern that suggests that they might benefit from a specific type of support. And it's also about creating an environment where everyone can feel comfortable by, acknowledging these things without stigma. So if you're looking to support a neurodivergent colleague effectively, I've got some tips that you can take to do that. So the first thing I'd suggest is educating yourself. When you develop your understanding of neurodiversity, you can much better appreciate the strengths and the challenges that your colleague might be facing. Even just building this kind of awareness can make a huge difference in how you interact with each other at the workplace. I know this helped a lot with a very close friend of mine that once they disclosed to their employer and to their colleagues that they were neurodivergent, people started to not misinterpret them as much as before. They can understand that there were reasons why my friend might come across as a bit blunt, that it wasn't about being rude, it was about their personal communication style. And that took the sting out of it for people, I think, made them feel like it wasn't personal. Secondly, I'd suggest fostering an inclusive environment. And you can do that by encouraging open and respectful communication and flexibility in your work practices that really work to accommodate different working styles. So, for example, some NDers prefer detailed emails over verbal instructions, and others might just want to be looking for a quiet space to do some focused work. Thirdly, communicate effectively. So make sure that your communication is really clear and think about asking them if they've got a preferred method of communication, for example, verbal or written. All staff, not just NDers, have got preferences. And once you know what those preferences are, you can align your style with theirs, which they're really going to appreciate. Fourthly, I'd suggest being discreet when you offer support. So instead of pointing out that they're different or pointing out the specific differences that you've noticed, be discreet in offering support and be considerate about their needs. For example, if they seem to get overwhelmed by having to work in a really noisy part of the office. You could suggest discreetly that they move their workspace to a quieter part of the floor. Fifth point I would suggest is to encourage them to have autonomy. So allow them to set their own pace and manage tasks in ways that they find most effective. At the end of the day, they just need to know that their colleagues trust them and that you care about the outputs rather than the process that they've used to get there. And when you give people autonomy, often it leads to greater job satisfaction and productivity. Lastly, I'd suggest having a consult and collaborate approach. If it's appropriate, involve them in discussions about creating a supportive work environment. You might have heard the saying, Rachel, nothing about us without us. I heard that a long time ago when I was working in not-for-profit in the Indigenous health space. And it's always stuck with me. You need the lived experience voice in the conversations that happen when you're looking to find solutions for those people. And by involving them, you're going to empower them and you end up with these great solutions at work because the people that have the challenges of coming up with that solution with you. So, for example, offering flexible work arrangements if you don't already have them in place, and encourage them to use things like time management tools or software so that can feel more comfortable and more in control of the flow of their day. And it's also helpful to focus on clear and direct communication and checking in with the person to make sure they're understanding you and you're understanding them. So I think remember the goal is to support your colleague in a way that respects their individuality while you're enhancing their ability to succeed and contribute to the team. So the bottom line for me out of all of this, Rachel, is always approach this with empathy, open communication, and a willingness to adapt your style.
Fantastic, Kate. I think that's a really good summary. So I feel like my take on this question is, I guess, really similar, and I don't want to just repeat pretty much everything you just said because it would have been also my same answer. But I guess what I feel like I can distill your answer, Kate, I suppose, is like it comes back down to good management practice and just creating a really good, inclusive, supportive environment that helps anyone, regardless of what challenges they may have or what strengths they may have. It's just providing that culture of safe psychological safety and support and inclusivity to allow everyone to perform at their best. And maybe some of those people, I suppose, in that process could be neurodivergent and they may not know about it. But if you kind of focus on creating that culture first, then that person may thrive. And I can speak from my personal experience, I suppose, is that I was undiagnosed for years before I was diagnosed at the age of 25. And the workplaces I've had before that just simply created that really supportive environment where, if I had days where I had off days, they were met with understanding and time off and, sitting down with me and having those conversations around, how can we help you best perform in this role? Like, how can we best help you succeed in this role? Like kind of that focus, on how to help someone succeed and identifying their strengths and identifying their challenges. Going through that process can kind of help people succeed, whether you're neurodivergent or not, I suppose. But I guess that method disproportionately helps neurodivergent people is because we've never really received that from many workplaces that we've worked in. So having that kind of support is just magically something that really helps enhance the experience for us. So I guess to really sum up, if you suspect someone's neurodivergent, I mean, sure, don't make those assumptions straight away. You might recognize a pattern of challenges and strengths that might seem like they're neurodivergent, but let that person come to that conclusion themselves through their own research and support. And all you have to do is be there as a supporting person to help them, I guess, step through any challenges they have and maximize their strengths. So yeah, at the risk of repeating myself too much on this topic, I think I totally agree with what you said, Kate. So do you have any final words to wrap this up?
I just say I really look forward. This is what I said yesterday in my workshop. I just really look forward to the day when we don't need the labels anymore. That going into any workplace, our manager just says, "Hey, how can I set you up for success? What are your preferences? How do you like to be communicated to? How do you like to receive feedback? Uh, what kind of supports can I give you to be able to help you do your job really well?" And that it's not a question or a conversation about neurodivergence or neurotypicality. It's just, hey, you as an individual in this workplace, what do you need? Do you need to work in a quieter part of the office? Do you need to know where the quiet spaces are for you to be able to recharge when you need to? I look forward to that day. But for now, yeah, I get that there are colleagues who really want to be allies and they really want to support others in their team to work well. And it is about being sensitive, but having open communication, I think, is just starting to socialize it and talk about it. So yeah, hopefully that helps our listeners.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kate.
No worries. Thank you, Rachel.